Tonight's format is, we have a 10-minute guest speaker, a 5-minute presentation on the step, tradition, or concept of the month. Last week it was step, so this week will be tradition. And a 30-minute guest speaker sharing on what they were like, what happened, and what they're like now. And actually that's a 40-minute speaker. It needs to be changed. Surprise, Molly. Please help me welcome our first speaker tonight from the WFS group, Tim.
Podium is everything. I'm Tim, I'm an alcoholic. So I've been thinking all week on what I was going to talk about, you know, and it's, with the way my brain works these days, it kind of just comes and goes. But, a little nervous. Podium scared the crap out of me. Why, I have no idea. And I'm probably going to cry a little bit, so be aware of that. Kind of my normal thing when I talk about like family and AA and my kids. You know, before I found AA, or gosh, actually AA found me, life was pretty dark and pretty, you know, it's like, and I didn't even realize how dark and alone I felt before sobriety came into my life. And, you know, in the beginning, you know, I didn't even realize how much I didn't want to have anything to do with not just the people around me or even people at work. It was, you know, I didn't want to have anything to do with my kids or my wife or anything. I just wanted to be left alone with my booze, you know? And to me, that wasn't necessarily the best thing in the world, but that's how I knew how to survive. This is what I knew. And, you know, I hear that, you know, like, you know, some people speak and, you know, they talk about their family life, about when they were kids and things of that nature, you know, and it's just like, yeah, I might have had a pretty rough life, but, you know, now looking back, you know, rough life or good life or whatever it was growing up, this was in me. It was almost like it was bound to happen, you know, because a disease is a disease, you know, it can develop over time and can get worse, but sometimes it's lingering there, you know. And I look back and I see how not just did I drink alcoholically, I did everything alcoholically, you know. So this program has become not just something to help me stop drinking. It's a way of life for me. It's a part of me. And, you know, like I was talking about how the dark times were, and, you know, me and my wife would fight all the time, and I just want to get away from her. I can't even count how many nights I slept on the couch because I wanted to sleep on the couch. I didn't want to sleep in the same bed as my wife because, you know, looking back, it was guilt and shame and, you know, and you know, I'm not good enough or whatever it might have been, and I was using my solution. The only solution that I knew was drinking, you know, and I was using that because this is what I know, this is the way life is, this is the way I saw other people living life or thought, because I know what's going on in everybody else's life, you know, I know how I affect everybody, and, you know, I didn't even realize until I got sober, because of course while I'm in it, you know, it's just like who sees anything beyond, you know, what's right here or beyond the next bottle or beyond the next beer, whatever it might be, is just how much, man, did my life suck, you know? And then once I got into, you know, I mean, it didn't cause me, like my alcoholism took me into places that I swore I would never go, you know? Besides the multiple DUIs, driving under revocation, jail, and even prison for a little while. And, you know, besides all that, it's, you know, all that emotional stuff, all that distancing of my kids and the stuff that I missed out on. You know, I felt guilty for that for a long time, you know? And, once I got into AA, aha moment, or anything of like that, or even once I started connecting with my higher power, like I had like the burning bush or anything like that, to me it was a little bit at a time. You know, I started doing things that were suggested of me. You know, the going to meetings, starting to work the steps, getting sponsors, things of that nature. You know, and it's like it was my eyes were on a dimmer switch. You know, to where slowly, as I started doing these things, the lights just slowly started coming on. A little bit more and a little bit more. And nowadays, my life is blazing, you know? And it's because of this program. It's because of the things that are suggested to me. They're easy, and they might be hard. You know, they're easy to be like simple steps to take. But they're kind of hard steps. But at the same time, they're nowhere near as hard as it was when I was drinking. And, probably secretary. I got to take, because of AA, because of my sobriety, this last weekend, actually I just got back yesterday, I got to take my daughter to Seattle. Just me and her, and it's amazing. And being her out of my kids, being her the most like. Oh man, we had a crazy, wonderful time. And she kept apologizing because we were doing all the things that she wanted to do. But I don't care. I told her that. I'm like, I don't care what we do. I'm here with you, taking you to have a good time, to go see some stupid YouTube concert where I was surrounded by a bunch of teenage screaming girls, you know? But I got to be there with my daughter. Excuse me. And, I also get to me, it's the simple things, you know? It's not the big things that come back into my life. It's not the, I get my license back, or my car's fixed now, or my career's going down the right path, that I hope my higher powers, like I'm making the right decisions there. But it's not those big things that come back. To me, it's the little stuff. I get to mow the lawn and watch my kids play, and I'm not sitting on the couch drunk, And like today, me and my son were sitting on the couch, and we're just sitting there, and then we just started wrestling out of nowhere. Just started wrestling, just having a great time, And if I was drinking, that would never happen. It would be more like, get away from me, kid. Go watch your YouTube or go play your video games. I'm busy right now. I'm too busy to have you in my life. And that is what sobriety has brought me. And a few days ago, I was talking to my daughter too, and she's had a few problems with like cell phone inappropriateness and stuff like that with her friends. And I went to go grab her phone because she was talking to one of her friends, and I just wanted to see what they were talking about. And she wouldn't let me look at it. So we got into this argument, and skip forward a little bit. I was talking to my wife about it, and then we went in there and we were talking to my daughter, and my wife said, the best thing ever in my sobriety was I'm the dad now that she has always wanted her whole life. Sorry. But, I cry because that's how important this is to me. This has given me everything in my life, and at first, my wife wasn't necessarily on board with me going to AA so much, or not necessarily just going to AA, but just putting the time that I put into AA, speaking at meetings, or doing panels, or whatever it might be, meeting my sponsor. Because it was taken away from the family, and she didn't necessarily understand. She's not an alcoholic. So, how do you explain to a non-alcoholic about alcoholism? And just recently, we went to a different type of meeting, and she's like, all right, I know I've been wanting you to go to these type of meetings, but you don't have to. Because it wasn't there, it wasn't for us. And now she's starting to understand more and more how important this is, because it's not just something, or how she used to get upset when I would say it's AA, then it's family, and then work, and then so on down or whatnot. And she would get upset when I would say that, you know, because my family should be more important than anything, you know. But it's the, you know, the trickle effect, you know, or the pebble in the pond, you know. If that pebble, that center ring, gets screwed up, then everything else is going to follow, a domino effect, or however, whatever you want to say it as, you know. So it's like now she's getting it to where I need this. I need this in my life. And because I have this in my life, I have everything else. And like I said, it's not the material, it's the promises that mean everything. It's the respect, it's your family, it's the kids. And it's just an amazing deal. Amazing. And there's people out there I wish I could choke and say, "You're coming in," you know? But you can't. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Tim. Wow, yeah, that was really awesome. Thank you for sharing with us. So now, after that, we get to hear about Tradition 8. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to read tonight out of Tradition 8. You got 5 minutes time. Okay. So, Tradition 8, because we are in the 8th month of the year. I'm going to start with what Tim read out of the long form tonight, which is, I'm getting from the back of the AA group pamphlet. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. We define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fee or for hire. But we may employ alcoholics where they are going to perform those services for which we may otherwise have to engage non-alcoholics, such as special services. Such special services may be recompensed, but our usual AA 12-step work is never to be paid for. So that's like in our central office, or I guess here we call it intergroup. We have an intergroup manager, and she's on the clock. She's not doing 12-step work when she answers the phone, and when she prints out a receipt for us when we buy books, and when the groups come in and need schedules or whatever. She's not doing 12-step work. She's making 12-step work possible for us to do. So, for example, if she gets a call and it's somebody needing 12-step work, she calls one of us, or she calls the 12-step, the hotline chair, or if she wants to take the call herself, she would, I'm guessing, if I was working there, I would punch out, or wait till my break, because we don't do 12-step work on the clock. And so that's what it's talking about there. I love the 12 Traditions Illustrated. This is like my best friend. 12 Traditions for Dummies. It's definitely what I learned the traditions out of first. And it says in here, under the 8th tradition, the 8th tradition is like the 7th, focuses on a vulgar 5-letter word that isn't actually mentioned in either: money. Many of us have had to explain to some cynical prospect, no, I'm not a social worker. I don't get paid for talking with you. I'm doing this because it's the best way for me to stay sober myself. This does not mean, of course, that the idea of turning professional has never entered any AA's minds. In the lean years, Bill Wilson himself did think to earn money through his experience in helping other alcoholics, but with a strong nudge from the group conscience, he soon realized that no AA should ever ask or accept payment for carrying this message to someone else, person to person or face to face. So at my old home group, we have this guy, they meet 6 days a week, and on, I think it was Fridays, this guy, he's an alcoholic, he's one of us, he comes in, he sits in the corner, And I never understood this at first, why he never participated on Fridays, but he would participate the rest of the days. Well, on Fridays, he was on the clock. He was taking a client with him to the meeting. And he's, I guess he's being appropriate. And so he's on the clock, he's taking a client. Apparently he works for the treatment industry, and he is there doing his job. They used to use the term two-hatters. Back in AA Comes of Age and Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers and Pass It On and all those history books. And the two hatters mean, you can be an AA and you can be a paid professional. You just can't do the two at the same time, which means when he comes to a meeting and he's on the clock, he's not an AA member. He's getting paid. He has his job. And when he goes and clocks out, or when he's coming to his home group, he's got his AA hat on and he can share and he can participate. He just needs to make sure never to wear both those hats at the same time, and he's a great example. I send new people in the field to him all the time for reference. The next thing I'll read is out of our 12 and 12. Alcoholics Anonymous will never have a professional class. We've gained some understanding of the ancient words, freely ye have received, freely give. We've discovered that the point of professionalism, money and spirituality do not mix. Almost no recovery from alcoholism has ever been brought about by the world's best professionals, whether medical or religious. We do not decry professionalism in other fields, but we accept the sober fact that it does not work for us. Every time we have tried to professionalize our 12-step work, the result has been exactly the same. Our single purpose has been defeated. 12-step work is, after all, our own step work. And then the last thing I'll read is from the Big Book, which I love when I find something in the Big Book about the traditions, because the Big Book was actually written 10 years before the traditions were ever written. And I have, because I'm a geek, been able to find every single tradition in this book, in the Big Book, 10 years before they were even written, which is amazing. So I'm going to read from page 19 of the Big Book. None of us make a sole vocation. I looked up the word vocation, and it means career or occupation. None of us make a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. A few of us are fortunate enough to be situated that we can give nearly all of our lives, all of their time, that they can give nearly all of their time to the work. So that is just another, place in even the Big Book that talks about Tradition 8 before the tradition was even written, which, if you're an AA geek like me, you think that's super cool, so thanks. To begin this meeting again, please join me in a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. It is my honor and my pleasure to welcome Molly, a friend of mine who we've been trying to get her here for a little while, and I think finally she's permanently here. And I just want to ask you guys to all help me welcome my friend Molly for our music.
Hi everybody, my name's Molly. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is May 2nd, 2007, so this past May I had 11 years. My home group was a group called Jaywalkers in California, and I have a sponsor. She knows she's my sponsor. We check in with each other. I give her a call every week, once a week, and I sponsor women as well. And I have, it's just been a great privilege, honor, and pleasure to be asked to speak here, and thank you again, Carrie, for asking me tonight. So blessings from Bend. This is all new. So I grew up, experience, strength, and hope, what happened, what it's like, and what it's like now. I grew up in Pennsylvania, one of 8 children, Irish Catholic family, lots of fun, lots of drinking at home, at least on holidays and that kind of thing. I thought it was a very normal environment. But when I was still a toddler, my older siblings told me I was adopted. They said I fell out of a Scottish car on the road and they picked me up. And for years, I thought I was adopted, and felt like didn't belong, I wasn't part of, till I finally got old enough to say, what is a Scottish car? And, finally asked my parents, was I adopted? Anyway, that was, my first few years of feeling less than and not part of. So I don't know if that's where it all started, but God bless my brothers for all the teasing they gave me, I think gave me character. And then my first drink was I was about 13 years old. I had a stomach ache, and my mom gave me a shot of whiskey, and I remember it going down, and I remember even though it burned, it was like the feeling right after, it's like, oh, I feel that did the trick, and so whenever I had any kind of ache or pain, the shot of whiskey came out, and I had that relief. So that's, I guess when I was about 13 is when that cycle started. My first, just to give you some ideas of how I qualified, my first arrest, I was in high school, about 15 years old, and I was arrested for being on the beach after curfew back in New Jersey. And I was with my sister and 2 lifeguards. We thought we'd hit the jackpot. And anyway, we were taken to the police station, and the policeman sent my sister and I home, and they said, if you come back in the morning and call your parents, we'll let you go home. So we went back to the police station in the morning with little dresses on, looking all proper, and I went to call my parents and faked a phone call to my mom. I put my finger down on the receiver as I had my back turned to the policeman. Had this whole conversation about what happened, we'll be good, we promise, and that was it. So it was like already the lying and the deceiving and trying to get away with things started at an early age. My next consequence that involved drinking, I was in high school and had gone to a party, came home, forgot to put the brake on my mom's car, and the car rolled across the street. Didn't hit anything, didn't hurt anything, but she came up the stairs and was trying to wake me up, and I was pretending I was asleep, and it was like, go away, and no damage, but it was like I'd been out drinking and I was irresponsible, and it could have hurt someone or something. But I really didn't give it much thought at that age or at that time. I did well in school, even though the circumstances I had at home, my mom's drinking, she definitely was an alcoholic, and her drinking was taking off during my high school years, but I managed to get a scholarship to college and moved out to Kansas City, spent 2 years there at the Art Institute, and came out to California to finish up my schooling. And then when I was 19, my father passed away. And so my mom sold the house and moved out to California, but my drinking really took off after my dad died. And I took it really hard and started drinking a lot at that age. And in my mid-20s, I totaled my car. I had come home, I had a fight with my boyfriend, and totaled the car inside. And there's a tunnel going from Alameda, from Oakland, and it's a very enclosed, small tunnel. But I totaled the car, and they didn't take you to jail in those days or give you a ticket or anything, but they brought that car over to my house a couple days later, and it was just crunched in and covered in blood. I mean, it was pretty bad, and I had a big gash in my head. And I remember the night they took me to the hospital, I'm like, I'd like a plastic surgeon, please, to fix my head. I mean, the ego was just like to hear, from an early age. But so anyway, I had the car towed away, and I'm looking at this wreck, and I'm thinking, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Oh, it's my boyfriend's fault because we got in a fight. Did not really think it was anything to do with my drinking or me at all. And then a few years later, I did get arrested for drinking and driving, and I spent a night in the Oakland jail. And that was an experience. The next morning, there are all these women being let out of the jail, and a lot of them are like, what are you doing here, honey? You don't look like you belong, And I'm like, that's right, I don't, And I just did not think I fit the profile of an alcoholic, even though these things were happening. And then when I was in my early 30s, I met the man of my dreams, and he became my designated driver. So I didn't have to drink and drive anymore. And so my life started on this path of, I continued to drink. My husband drank with me, so that was easy. We went through some tough times. We tried to start a family. We weren't able to. And that was a big heartache during the early part of our marriage. And years later, I remember reading an article about, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, it's harder to start a family. And it was like, I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, that was another reason to drink, I should say. So I kept drinking and kept drinking and kept drinking. And life just got, I was laid off from jobs, and then I decided to work for myself so I didn't have to be accountable to anyone. And then I started just not caring about my work anymore, and I was in design and advertising for a while, and I used to go to every time I had a job printing, I would always go to the printers to make sure the job printed okay. And I remember, towards the end of my drinking, I just figured, oh, they'll do fine, they don't need me there. And of course, that was the one time the job did not turn out well, and there was a huge financial consequence for that. And I just saw myself going downhill, and we went to a marriage encounter weekend after we found out we couldn't start a family. And at the end of this weekend, they ask you different questions. You go off and answer, and you come back and talk about your answers. And one of the things they said at the end was, the question was, what would you like to see more in your marriage? And we both came back, and our answer was the same, and it was more spirituality. And we had never talked about it. We'd never even discussed it. And so we get home from this weekend and decide to join this church, and the woman priest there was, she had been through what I had been through, so she helped me heal, I think, on a spiritual level from that. But it still, didn't stop the drinking. I'd show up on Sunday, and I was doing lecturing, and I was baking bread for communion. I was trying to help out and get involved. But it was Sunday morning. It was like, oh, God, help me stop drinking. Every Sunday morning, I felt awful, And it went on for years, And then one of the final straws was I decided to get in the car, and I had been drinking, and I got pulled over, and I spent another night in jail, arrested again. And this was in Santa Rita Jail in Dublin. And it was a cold cement slab, I'll never forget it. And I remember the sweater I had on the night I was arrested. I took it to the dry cleaners, and it hung in my closet for years, and I just couldn't look at it anymore. And I finally donated it, I think. It was just a terrible memory, but my car was towed. I ended up in jail for one night. But wait, that wasn't the end. That wasn't enough. It was still, not enough to get me here. But all these years, I'm thinking, I don't like how much I drink. I want to stop. I don't know why I drink the way I do. Why do I drink so much? Why can't I stop? I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to, I read books. Read this book and you can stop drinking in 7 days. Another book was, this diet, you can stop drinking in 14 days. And I was trying all these other things to stop drinking. And none of them worked. But I was trying. I knew something was wrong. I knew I didn't want to continue this way. And then what really was a very low bottom, probably the lowest bottom, was I ended up in the hospital one night. My husband, in the morning, my husband took me to ER. I had been drinking way, way too much the night before, combined with other substances, and I was in really bad shape. I couldn't form a sentence. I thought I had done brain damage to myself. It was really frightening. And so after that experience, I called my doctor, and his wife suggested Center for Recovery, an outpatient program near where I live. So I checked myself in for an outpatient program, and even at that, I thought, well, I'm better than the other people because I can go home every night. I don't have to be an inpatient, and I felt like I wasn't as bad as the other people there, so I still didn't feel like quite as bad as I think people wanted me to think I was, I don't know, but I finished this program, and before you could leave, you had to get a sponsor before you could graduate. And so I found a sponsor, started going to meetings, got commitments, and was in service. I remember my first couple years of sobriety, my sponsor would have me go to business meetings. I'm like, business meetings? And I was like, I hated them, you know. It was like, what does this have to do with me not drinking, you know? And but what came to be was what I learned in those business meetings was how to take that experience out into the world when I had to have a meeting, you know, in the real world, in real business, and get along with other people and listen to other opinions and other views and that kind of thing. But the first couple of years I struggled in sobriety. I had not completely surrendered. I had not done the third step completely. I was still hanging on. And so I relapsed a couple times during my first couple years of sobriety. And when I finally was done, May 2nd, 2007, I knew it was different. I knew I was done. I surrendered physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I remember just lying on the ground, you know, with my arms extended. It's like, I am done. You know, please help me. You know, it was so complete. My surrender was so complete. And I've never had to look back since. And it was just an amazing experience. And so I really consider that my true sobriety day, because that's really when I surrendered, and that's when everything changed and things started to happen, and I started my journey. So in my second year of sobriety, my mom passed away. And that was something I said, if mom gets sick, if mom dies, I'm drinking, you know, there's no way I'm going to be able to not. And luckily through AA and my sponsor and what I had learned thus far, taught me to show up and be of service. And so she was at home under hospice care, and I was with her almost every day, and I sang to her. I mean, I sang Christmas carols, and I sang whatever songs I could think of. I read fairy tales to her, ones she read to me when I was little. And I would read letters from people in the family, and I told her I loved her like 1,000,000 times. And so I had this 10-day period of her final passing that was just miraculous. And it was really a privilege to walk through that. And the moment she died, I was 10 minutes away. I was getting my sister was taking a turn sitting with her. And I was in a store getting some juice or whatever, and I dropped everything and got over there. And I'm glad, I think, that she went when I wasn't there. I think that was timed, you know, divine timing. But when I got there, you know, my mom has passed away, and nothing can prepare you for that moment, even though you know it's coming. You know, nothing can prepare you for what it's going to do to your gut and your heart, and you know, it's like, whoa. And I picked up my sister's hands and brought her across my mom's body and said the Lord's Prayer with her, and a hymn came to mind, and I sang that. There were flowers on her nightstand, and I put them all around her pillow, around her head, and I called the mortuary people, and they came, and I helped to wrap her body and helped put her on the gurney. And it was like, I had never been through anything like that. I'd never seen a person in death or anything like that. But as this is all happening, I'm thinking, this is natural. She was 95, and this is someone going from life into death, and this is just the normal passage of time. And it was just an amazing experience, amazing. I have chills right now thinking about what a gift that was to walk through that. And the kicker is she got sober when she turned 80, 15 years prior. She just quit cold turkey, stopped drinking. We were going to have a big 80th birthday party for her, and she knew the gig was probably going to be up, and she quit. She never went to AA, but she quit drinking, and so she got sober before I did. And then when I got sober, I started to share with her the spiritual growth I was having, and we would share prayers together, and I would tell her what I was learning in AA, and we would pray together, and it was just amazing, you know, and I could see her faith growing and her spirituality growing, you know, all the years that she was sober. And then, excuse me, so there's been some challenges, definitely, in sobriety. A few years after that, my husband was diagnosed with a really rare cancer. they had removed a lump from his leg, and they called him and they said, "You need to have emergency surgery right now. We need to schedule it right now." And it was a cancer that was not very well known. Not too many people knew what it was or anything about it. I think there were 2 doctors in all of California that had any experience with this kind of cancer. And so I'm sharing in a meeting, and this woman comes up after and she goes, "Well, who's going to take you to the surgery and sit with you?" And I just looked like, "You can do that? You can ask for help like that?" I didn't know I could ask for help like that, and so she happened to be a surgical nurse, and she showed up she showed up at the hospital, and she's looking at all the gory pictures with the doctor, explaining everything to me, but anyway, so got through that, and everything's fine, no more cancer. That all got, cleared up. And a few years after that, he came down with another kind of cancer. And we're like, "Oh, we know how to do cancer. We've done this before, and we knew who to call, we knew what to do," and got through that fine too. And he's fine, and he used to be my drinking buddy. He was my designated driver, and after coming to AA for about 3 years, I came home every night for 3 years, and he was still drinking, but I never said a word. I'd go in the other room and call someone, and they'd say, "Go to a meeting," and I'm like, "I just went to a meeting," and they'd say, "Go to another meeting." And I just did what I was told, and I never said a word, and I thought too, it was what I've learned here and what I've been taught here. That was me on the couch, that used to be me. How can I say anything? That's how I was, and I was right there along with him. And so, with the grace of God, he decided to get into AA, and so now we share a sober life together, which is just beautiful. We're coming up on 32 years married next week. So being sober has so many gifts that it's just amazing. So other things that have happened in sobriety, we've gotten to travel in sobriety, and we went to English-speaking meetings in Italy one year, and it was fascinating because they would say, "We'd like to hear about your journey through sobriety. We don't want to hear about your journey through Italy." And it was such a wonderful lesson. It's like, okay, we want to talk about the solution. We don't want to hear about you whining that everyone's drinking wine and you're not or can't, And it was just a wonderful lesson on how to bring the message wherever you are in the world of sobriety, recovery, solution, what you're doing to stay sober, how can you help someone else, not whining or complaining or, being negative, and really made me aware of, what that newcomer might hear, what is the newcomer going to think of that? And I was taught when you travel and you say you're traveling and you're from out of town, that's, that can show a newcomer, wow, they're going to any length to stay sober. What a good example that can be. We were on vacation one time, and there were no meetings in this place. It was a small island, no meetings, and newly sober. And there was only one English-speaking church, and I went to the priest after a service, and I said, "I'm alcoholic. If there's anyone that you know that needs help, please put them in touch with me. I'll be here for 2 weeks." And then all of a sudden, word gets around. He gives us the key to his office at the church. It's filled with big books. We started out with 2 people, then 3 people. By the end of 2 weeks, there were 6 people every day at this little meeting. And it's just, that was just a huge blessing and a huge gift. And so when we went back again, he gives us the key again to his office, and we can start meetings. I think they've started a meeting there since we've left, but traveling in sobriety has been really amazing, experience to be able to do that. In about 6 years into sobriety, I decided to look into my past records of my arrests and DUIs and all that, and I wanted to clean up my past. And I had gone to, I don't know if it was a TSA or a global thing where you can get entry back in if you're traveling. And anyway, they did a background check, bottom line, and I flunked. And they said, you gotta, and they said, "Oh, shoplifting in this year." I'm like, "Oh, I forgot about that one." So I'm faced with, some shoplifting, some DUIs, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to clean up this record. So I went to 3 different courthouses in the Bay Area where each one of these these infractions were done. And I filed papers myself and did it all myself. And I went in and had letters from my sponsor and other documentation to get all of these charges dismissed and, put away and taken out of the court system. And so I went to Oakland for a DUI, and I went to the Pleasant Hill Court for my last DUI there, and then I went to San Francisco for this shoplifting charge that I didn't know I had or forgot. And everyone in the courtroom is like, and the judge, and she goes, well, dear, she said, I don't think anybody in this courtroom was even born at that time. And she said, behave yourself, and she dropped that one. And then I found out that didn't really clean my record. I had to write to the FBI and the Department of Justice and the California State Department of Justice. And so I did all that, and I sent them all the paperwork. And lo and behold, about 4 years ago, I was working for a doctor, and our company got acquired by Stanford Healthcare, and they did a background check. Bingo, clean as a whistle. And, I had no idea that was going to be a gift from that footwork, So that was a huge, huge gift. So I have a clean record today. It feels good. It feels really good. I feel like I can look anyone in the eye and everyone in the eye, and I can feel like, I'm a much better citizen than I used to be, and I'm a much better person in the world than I used to be. One of the things I did in the last year at my job, I volunteered as a wellness ambassador, and that was a position where I could bring in body, mind, and spirit health into the workplace. And no one at work knew I was in the program, but I brought in meditations every morning. So we would meditate before the day started, and I brought in a dietitian, and I brought in a physical therapist, and all these different ways to keep fit, body, mind, and spirit. And so no one at work knew that these are my passions, being fit, being healthy, being spiritual, meditation. And so I got to bring all my passions into the workplace, all thanks to AA, and it was all AA. So that's been a big blessing as well. One of the things that I've always had during my time in sobriety is a service commitment. I've had lots of different service commitments over the years. When I was 2 years sober, I chaired a 3-day women's retreat that was a big commitment, but the year before I was a volunteer, and I got to see how, a dozen women or so in this committee, it was like effortless. And I thought, oh, so this is how every committee in AA works, like effortless. And I had no idea that down the road there'd be other committees I was on that didn't run so smoothly, but it was such a great learning experience of how principles over personalities, could come into play. So lots of service. Service keeps me from being isolated. It keeps me sober. I love sponsoring women. I love working out of the big book. I just have just a newfound respect for sobriety. Every time I open a new book, or every day really, every day is a newfound respect for sobriety. About 4 or 5 years ago, I started a meditation practice, which has changed my life. It's changed my sobriety. It's changed my life. It's given me the ability to be in the moment more often, to pause, to deal with difficult people at work. We had a lot of people that came in, they were sick. They, were coming into the doctor's office, and there were a lot of people unhappy and sick and this and that. And I was able to deal with them with a lot of grace and compassion. I was feeling really judgmental still when I was about 6 years sober, and I was judging people and in my head, and I just got to the point where I felt uncomfortable doing it. I felt it was painful. It got to the point it was painful. I didn't like it anymore. And so I'm looking in the books of, okay, what's the opposite of judgmental? Compassion. Okay, so I started reading up on compassion, and then it was like, I've got to do something to get compassionate. So I started a meditation on compassion. I did it for 30 days in a row. And the end of 30 days, it was so different, I mean, it changed how I look at people, changed how I accept people, with kindness and love, which I had a hard time doing in some cases. So it's just been the biggest gift of sobriety is learning how to meditate. And recently we've moved here, and people say moving is one of the biggest stresses in life. And so in March, getting ready for all this stress, I went to a fear workshop. I thought, well, I wasn't in any fear at the time, but I was planning on getting some. And I figured I'd get some during the move and after the move and all that. So I went to this fear workshop, and they gave us this great prayer. God, please, I offer myself to you. Please take care of everything else. And so I've been saying that a lot the last few months. Great, great prayer for fear. But, I've never moved in sobriety before. And it was a lot of surrenders, surrender after surrender after surrender. We had a car that we had to give up. We had furniture we gave up. We gave away furniture by mistake that we didn't mean to, but then God gave it back to us. But there were just so many opportunities for learning how to surrender and be in acceptance, throughout this process of letting go of things, letting go of places, letting go of what we knew. The morning of our move, the car battery was dead. The person that bought our house showed up at 7 a.m. He wanted to ask us a million more questions and get the keys. And then the cat escaped from the car. And it was all this the morning of our move. And a friend from the program showed up to drive the truck, and he just gathered us up in the garage and got us all to pray. And we prayed for a safe journey, and everything turned out wonderfully. And then we got here, and friends of the program helped us unload our truck. And so God's been putting, little God shots throughout the whole process, all the way along the way. God's shown up for us. We wanted to be in a place where we could be be in nature more and be more at peace than the lifestyle we had before. And I just really feel we're on a whole new journey. Everything's an adventure. Sobriety here is an adventure, and I've only been here a few weeks, but it is different from where I was. But it's like, okay, different can be good. What if there's a surprise behind what's different here? What can I learn about people that do things differently and how things are done differently? And what kind of miracles are going to be behind some of these new experiences that I'm going to walk through here? So for me, it's like an adventure and a way to be open and learn how to fit in here, be of service here, reach my hand out here, both in AA and the community. So it's a whole new opportunity to start a new life in sobriety. So what I do on a daily basis is I get up in the morning and I usually read out of the 24-hour book, and there's a daily meditation on spirituality that I have, and I have meditations out of that book, and I have time for prayer and meditation as well. And it was one thing I wanted when I came to retire or semi-retire is I wanted a special place for prayer and meditation. That's going to be a goal of my life, is having that spot. I want my spot for that. And I have it now. I have this spot at the moment. So I do my prayer and meditation in the morning. I try to get to as many meetings as I can and get in service. Having my husband here with me, sober, and going through this journey together and, praying together. We had a book, and there was a prayer about new beginnings, and it talked about, the new beginnings can be all positive, So I don't have any fear today. I don't have any fear of what's coming. I don't have fear of dying after going through what I did with my mom. I don't feel fear today. I mean, it can come up, but it goes away pretty quickly. And when I was new, someone said, you never have to get off that pink cloud if you don't want to. And so I didn't know that was an option either. So I climb back up on that pink cloud whenever I find myself slipping off, It's a great anchor to know I can still do that. I'm just, you know, incredibly grateful. Really happy to be here and happy to share with you. And I hope that you've heard something that you enjoyed tonight. But thank you for letting me share.